In this nondescript building in suburban St. Louis, some of the most cutting-edge work in the world of virtual reality is taking place. This marketing video for their company, NVIDIA, may look more like a cartoon, but the work on this product, called holodeck, is very real.
Yeah, this is for engineers, architects, people that want to look over designs and make decisions on their designs. So we work with architects to bring in their building at scale or at small scale, because in VR you can do whatever you want, right? You pick up a building, toss it and shake it.
People can enter the holodeck, a virtual space, interact with one another, and work on the same models and projects. Car companies and architects are already using it in a test phase.
If somebody's working on a car or like a building, like an architectural sort of thing, they can get in there and look around and say, oh, well, I want to change this, I want to change that.
And just how far can this go?
Remote driving system activated.
Well, look no further than the hit movie Black Panther for inspiration in something they showed off at a Silicon Valley conference this past March.
So we're in holodeck.
They used holodeck with a person in virtual reality to remotely drive a real car.
You can see he's driving, that's his view, and this is the real car, and that's him driving on stage. He's on stage. And yeah, and he was driving a real car. The issue is you have to have a huge parking lot, and there's serious safety concerns, you know, when you're testing these things.
This is the virtual world they're building in this office, and their motivations for the future often come from pop culture.
The most obvious answer is science fiction, right? Like a lot of things that you saw on Star Trek or Star Wars or something decades ago are starting to become real possibilities now.
I didn't believe these simulations could be this real.
In another reference to TV and movies, the show Star Trek: The Next Generation is where the holodeck idea came from to begin with. It was a virtual room used to get away from it all on the Starship Enterprise.
Frequently we'll go back to Star Trek: The Next Generation or something like that and see like what they're doing, and it's a lot of visual inspiration and also just ideas of like, that was a cool thing they did. I wonder if we could do that.
The reason they can do so much of it has to do with NVIDIA's core business. The California-based company makes some of the world's most high-powered graphics cards, called GPUs in the industry. Advances in the hardware allow for software like we've never seen before.
Now, you know, your graphics card can't just render pixels, it can also solve math problems and do simulations and things like that.
They started figuring out the ramifications of that a couple of years ago when they released Funhouse, a state-of-the-art virtual reality game designed by the St. Louis group. Some of the biggest advances are images that move randomly, like fire, water, and smoke.
In Funhouse, for instance, they give you little squirt guns that you can squirt around. It's a real fluid simulation coming out of it. So it splashes and it interacts and it pools, you know, all those cool things. That's because of general purpose computing that we can do on a graphics card now.
The biggest advancements now come from the tiniest of subtleties, the things that make virtual interactions seem a little more real.
Using an application by yourself is one thing, and you can really feel like you're there. But if you're there at the same time as someone else is there and they're talking to you, you can hear them through the application, you can see them. You see their hands moving. So the avatar in holodeck is key. The hands, the arms, the torso moving, and the head moving.
And while the St. Louis office is leading the way, holodeck is a global effort. In fact, those working on it meet in holodeck as they continue to build it.
Every day, I interact with people in Seattle, Santa Clara, Texas, New York, Zurich, Moscow, Shanghai, sometimes the UK, and a lot of times we're in the application with them.
Considering how far virtual reality has come in the last couple of years, they find the idea of what's next to be mind-boggling. Those next steps will likely be taken from here. They say improvement of the images and the ability to not be tethered to a computer will make VR all the more real.
I think as soon as we drop that restraint, if we can, to where you can move around with a bit more freedom, I think the possibilities are really, really endless.
I imagine at some point we'll take your glasses off and like, wait, is that on my glasses or is that in real life, right?
I love being able to, with modern technology, I can go visit the places I've visited in the past or places that I just don't know if I'll ever get a chance to visit in the future. And now I can do that in VR from the comfort of my own home, right? I still love to travel and like do real travel, but this is like an exponential explosion for me.
There are critics who say virtual reality is isolating.
There's nowhere left to go. Nowhere. Except the oasis.
The recent hit movie Ready Player One seemed to be a cautionary tale about that. But those building the next generation of virtual reality beg to differ.
What matters is that we're in this virtual space together and hanging out, and it's much more immersive than a phone call, right? You know, because they're there as a virtual representation of themselves. And something we've worked on in Holodeck pretty heavily is getting you know, just from those three inputs, your hands and your head, getting the rest of the body language to transfer through. My biggest thing with virtual reality is you have to try it. You know, it's one of those things that it just simply can't be explained, right? You put the headset on and suddenly you're in a different world.